I've done over 3,500 live streams, and I think this might be my most elaborate one ever. So hopefully you guys are in for this. You guys are up for a challenge. I'm using 2 new pieces of technology that I've never used. I have well over 40 different screenshots and overlays that I'm going to transition between. And I'm going to talk a little bit about football, but I wanted to kind of talk about the draft and everything that kind of went into it. And I wanted to just kind of share some of the things that I took away. I kind of started off the day this weekend was like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch the draft. I'm not gonna use my devices. I'm just gonna have a heck of a lot of fun. I mean, as I was watching the draft, I was kind of following all of the things that were kind of going on in regards to the draft. Everything, all of the coverage that was kind of happening, along the way. And I thought it was really interesting. And so I decided to break down 15 different things that I learned. And I can tell you, I originally wrote down the 5 things that I wanted to learn from the virtual draft and 5 things they did wrong. Like literally that was my goal. I was like, you know what? There's gonna be 5 things that they did right and 5 things that they did wrong, right? And that's kind of where I'm gonna, guess what they are gonna do. But I actually think they did an amazing job. But I think there's tons of lessons that we can learn from in our virtual events and in the things that we're moving forward. So let's just get into the first one. And the first one there is the change is odd, polarizing, and different, so you have to own it. And I think that was something that we definitely saw. I actually loved JJ Watt's tweet here. He said, do you know how long my mom would have had us cleaning the house if there was going to be national TV cameras in our living room for the draft? And I know this was a big piece of contention for the draft. And funny enough, they actually didn't move the draft online until I believe it was April 6th. So yeah, April 6th is when they actually moved the draft online, which I thought was pretty interesting from a standpoint of, wow, you're not going to even give yourself an entire month. And although the draft is, let's face it, put on by the NFL, which is a giant mammoth of an organization, it's also kind of important to realize that less than a month to get that ready is still a heck of a lot of time, or not that much time. And there's also just the case that there's lots of change, and I think for a lot of organizations that are out there today, we all have people that are stuck in their ways. We all have people that, hey, we've done it this way always. We don't want to change. And a lot of the feedback I heard about the draft going from offline to online was it's going to get hacked. People aren't going to be able to do trades. It's going to be too distracting. Nobody's going to watch it. And let's be real. I don't know what the numbers would have been if everyone wasn't stuck from home and had no sports for the last month to watch, but it was a big risk for Roger and kind of what was going on in that arena. But there's also it's a big, massive element of what they have kind of planned and how they're making this all work. And I thought they did a good job out of the gate of owning the different aspects of that first of the draft, while also kind of embracing the fact that, hey, this is something that is going to be different, and we have to connect what we're used to doing with what we're doing now. And I thought they did that really well. Roger Goodell had the fans behind him booing. And I think it's important when you're moving a draft from, or you're moving anything from offline to online, or you're making a massive change, it's important not to throw away everything that worked previously. It's important to kind of connect those dots, kind of along the way. And I think that could have been, can be really valuable. And I think for a lot of people, they kind of saw that, kind of across the board. Now, I will say, to set the straight, look at this massive setup that they had for production. And so I understand that not all of us have this kind of production, but granted, they were broadcasting across multiple channels in multiple feeds. And interestingly enough, they did only have a team of 6 people in the actual physical studio, which to me was, it seemed like it was massively under leveled compared to everything else that was going on. And so I give the NFL credit for going all in and connecting some of the dots. But I will say, for everything that they had to worry about and there was so much going on, the fact that it went off almost flawless is definitely something that they should be proud about. All right, number 2, test, tweak, and document it for pre-event content. So I don't know if you guys saw this, but a big thing around the entire draft, and I see a bunch of people that are jumping in here on across the different socials. What's up, Jim? Thanks for jumping in. Lots of people, kind of commenting about the draft, things that, were different events that have moved online. My good buddy John, who I used to work for, John actually is over there at Adobe Summit, and I had the luxury of doing some fun things with Adobe Summit, with everything that they had going on. I thought they did an amazing job in such a short period of time, of moving online. And I tell you what, one of the things that a lot of virtual events struggle with is how do you promote the event before it actually happens? And I thought this was actually genius, was that they, about 5 days before the event, they were testing the setups, making sure people's internet and the cameras were all at the right spots. And they actually used those photos to be like, hey, here's what it's going to look like before the draft happens. And I think when you're thinking about, a virtual event and moving something, something so big and massive from offline to online, one of the things that I think we forget or we don't do very well is educate the audience and kind of bring them along on the journey. And I always say that you have to take them, kind of backstage with you. And so I thought the NFL did a really good job of understanding the importance of that pre-event content. I loved the behind the scenes, looked into all the different draft rooms. Now, we're going to talk about the draft rooms a little bit. I would love to hear in the comments, for those that are watching live, which of the draft rooms were your favorite? I have a feeling I know the answer to that one. So number 2, test, tweak, and then document. All right, number 3, massive shout out to Trey Wingo. Trey Wingo was the host and MC across all of the days of the virtual event, the virtual draft. And I don't know about you guys, but in the virtual event, or in the normal draft, it's always so overwhelming and distracting. You have the crowd behind them. You have the announcers yelling over each other. You have them all fighting for screen time. You have you have Mal Kiper jumping in and Tom Mache, and there's so much chaos. And I expected them to use multiple hosts across the 3 days of the event. And it was one of my concerns, because I was like, you know what? This is going to be really tough for someone to jump in and get used to the delay or all of the technology things, right? Like, we were all watching, there was like a 2-second delay every time they sent it to one of the remote reporters. But let's face it, we should be expected. But as an announcer, as a host, I've hosted lots of events. I know some of my good friends watching this live have also hosted live events. That silence is deadly. And if they used multiple hosts that didn't have that rapport and didn't have that kind of broken down with them, I think that would have been a massive mistake. And I would think it would have been easy to do. But I think Trey Wingo did an amazing job, and I wanted to point out a couple of things that he did really, really well. A couple of them were, when he had 3 guests on the screen, what he would do is he would direct the question to one of the guests. But in a normal interview, he would direct the question to the guest would answer, it would come back to him, and then he would direct a question to the next guest. Well, in that scenario, you're dealing with 3 different 2-second delays, right? 2-second delay to ask the question, 2-second delay after the answer, 2-second delay to ask the new question. And I thought what Trey Wingo did really, really well, and this is something all hosts and MCs can learn from, is he did an amazing job of saying, hey, Riddick, Riddick, I'm curious, what's your answer to this? And Riddick, when you're done, send it over to Booker McFarland, right? And so what he did was, he directed the question, but he also directed the person to jump in next to the guest that was next, which really, it was genius, because the delay would have been a lot more noticeable. It would have been a lot more kind of janky from everything that goes on. My good friend Brian Kramer just said, or just co-host, which Brian and I have co-hosted a couple of events together. Adobe and Oracle come to mind, as well as IBM. Shout out to Mitch Jackson. What's up, Mitch Jackson? Thanks, Mitch and Deborah, for jumping in. I see Brian over there on Facebook as well. Thanks, everybody. Hey, Jennifer, jumping in on Facebook. So we're going through those 15 virtual event lessons from the NFL draft. And so we just did number 3. Invest in a great host and an MC and let them do what they do. Kudos, Trey Wingo. I tip my hat to you. I thought you did an amazing job. Absolutely amazing job. All right, number 4. We got number 4. Know what to multi-stream and what to make exclusive. Now, this is one of those things, as soon as I heard that the NFL draft was teaming up with the NFL Network, and ABC and using all of their social channels, I was like, oh man, here we go. Just gonna blast it out everywhere, and we're gonna have a whole bunch of the same thing on every channel, on every different message. And it's gonna be really confusing. And I give them credit; they did not do that. They did not overly multi-stream. They actually did multi-streaming, what I believe, correctly, in that they, on the TV channels, a lot of the same TV channels use the same broadcast. But you went to the NFL Network. This is, I don't know if you guys watch this, but actually a shout out to Vincent Orlick. I know who's watching this live. Vincent's actually the one that turned me on to this. So they actually had a bunch of the players, including Tampa Bay Tom Brady. And they had DJ Khaled, they had Kevin Hart, in what I would consider probably one of the most examples of the craziest Zoom you've ever seen, because Deion Sanders was talking over different people. It was pretty interesting, to say the least. But I thought it was a great way to use Facebook Live during the draft for people that maybe didn't want to listen to Trey Wingo for 8 hours a day, or to change up, how you were, those different pieces of it. And so I thought it was really smart. And then, of course, I'm a Steelers fan. You guys can kind of see it. I thought the Steelers, each one of the NFL teams did a different way of the virtual draft. The Steelers did a great thing. We didn't have a first-round draft pick this year. Actually, we did. We just got him last year. His name's Minka Fitzpatrick. But the Steelers did on day 2 and day 3 of the draft. They did interview series on their embedded website, and then they streamed it to Periscope and Facebook Live. But they did a great job of mixing in celebrities and players. This screenshot is with the president, Mr. Rooney, there of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But this is a good example of mixing up and leveraging multi-streaming when it makes sense, and leveraging direct kind of streaming for Facebook Live when that makes sense as well. My good friend Angus Nelson just said, what software are you using? This is Ecamm Live, the best. I absolutely love Ecamm Live. So I'm using Ecamm Live directly from my desktop right now, and I'm actually have 3 cameras hooked up. You're going to have to stay tuned to see one of the camera shots is coming up really soon. I think you guys are going to like that. So we have, there's Mr. Vincent Orlick, who I know who is a Tampa Bay fan. Jennifer saying what's up to Mitch and those that are in the room. Thanks, guys, for jumping in on a Sunday night and kind of taking a peek into this the draft. And I think it was it was really interesting, all of the different variables that went in to the draft. So we've done number 4 of 15. We're going to jump into number 5. Create swim lanes and then prepare to own that freedom. Well, what I mean by that is, if you give people rules, this is how you have to live stream, these are the things you have to do, everything becomes robotic, right? Everyone's like, every screen looks the same, every draft room looks the same. But if you tell people I need a wide angle shot, I would love for you to have a good setup and decent lighting, but you can be as creative as you want, you end up getting people like Bill Belichick, who had his dog in the seat when the draft pick was coming in, and then he, of course, walked up right after the draft pick was done and gave the dog a treat. I thought that was genius. I thought it was typical Bill Belichick. As a Steeler fan, I hate the Patriots, but I have respect for great people that I've been able to experience and watch, and Bill is one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest. But giving people swim lanes, right? And Adobe Summit, I know John Lewington was in here before. Adobe Summit did that really well. They said, hey, we want everybody to use a background from their house, and we want a wide angle shot, but they didn't really control things. We have a tendency, when we have so many different people doing something, to give them too many rules, or even worse, give them no rules at all. No rules at all, then all of a sudden people are either overwhelmed and they don't know where to start, or it looks so disconnected that there's no way to kind of bring it all together. And so I think it's a beauty if you can actually, what I like to call, create swim lanes between all of them and kind of make that all kind of work across the board. And that to me is a big piece of it, right? How do you manage the different elements? Well, you give them, hey, you have to have this, you can't have this. You have freedom to do what you want. And of course, we got a little bit of fun with Bill Belichick. We also got, I don't know about you guys, but as a dad, I loved seeing all of the kids involved with the general managers, the owners, the coaches, them coming in the room. And of course, as soon as the kids started to do it in a couple of rooms, you saw all the other kids run in there. And then, of course, you get different views. Like Jerry Jones from the Dallas Cowboys was on his $200 million yacht and doing his entire broadcast from his yacht. But to me, this is one of those things that not only do you want to be able to give that freedom and swim lanes, but you also have to prepare to own it, right? And here's the thing. They could have been, when they saw the kids coming in there, they could have just kind of avoided it. But instead, Trey Wingo, if you guys were watching yesterday, he's like, hey, we just found out that we wanted to make sure that we included the kids from all of the different teams. So reach out to us if your kids haven't been highlighted on the NFL draft, and we'll make sure to include them. And I thought that was so smart to kind of lean into that and kind of make that all work in that bigger scheme. And so, kudos to the NFL for kind of giving that swim lane and that ability for them to be creative and have some fun with it. All right, number six of 15 for you guys that are keeping track out there. And for those that are watching, you should be able to see, I'm going to have the blog with all of this broken down in the written form tomorrow. So you guys should be able to see that over on my channel. So this is probably one of my biggest soapboxes at the moment. When people think about a virtual event, they often say, okay, we're not sure if we want to do it live. And so they do everything recorded. Or they're like, well, it's not really a virtual event. We have to do everything live. And in my opinion, there is great value of going live. I'm going live right now. But there's also great value in including pre-recorded and produced content. And let's face it, it's ESPN and the NFL, so they're masters of mixing in, the combination of all of this different type of content. But I thought it was a great job for those that saw, this is one of the picks, the Cleveland Browns pick, and there was one of the kids from St. Jude's. And as soon as they said, hey, we're going to send it to this kid's house for him to introduce the first pick for the Cleveland Browns, I was like, oh man, that's going to be interesting. But what they did is they had a pre-recorded clip of the kid cheering and announcing himself and saying thank you. And he said, okay, and the Cleveland Browns are about to make their first pick, and I'm going to send it back to the studio. And then when it back to the studio, they made the live announcement of the draft pick. And this is a perfect example for everyone out there. When you're thinking about a virtual event, if there are elements that you can pre-record that don't need to be like this, don't need to have that back and forth, you should definitely leverage that because it has massive value when it comes to mitigating risk, as well as kind of adding a different dynamic. And I thought the NFL did a really, really good job of that. And they also did it when it came to produced video. As you saw, there was lots of musicians, different people integrated in the draft. And they had some pre-recorded musicians recording their music. And so they were able to provide different views. Because here's the thing, if they were like, oh, we want to include music in the broadcast, if it had to be live, well, of course, they would have to make sure the bandwidth was good and it would be all one shot and they would have to control all these variables. Because they didn't do it live, they added some production elements to it. So if you guys were watching, the squares moved all around the blocks. They had different words coming up on the screen. They had B-roll coming in. And to me, it is all about creating a virtual experience, but leveraging the video or the virtual experience that makes sense for that component. I believe every virtual event should have a heavy mix of live video, pre-recorded video, and produced video. And really the difference between pre-recorded and produced are things that that are massively edited, that include some B-roll, that maybe have some music in the background. So like the musician, when they had One Republic, that was a produced piece of content. When they had St. Jude's was a pre-recorded, look into the camera. And then of course Trey Wingo was live. And I think that is where we move this conversation towards. Not every keynote needs to be live, but not every keynote should be pre-recorded. And that healthy mix of that can be of massive value for virtual events today. Number 7, breaking that fourth wall, changing up the video shot. Let's face it, when we're watching virtual events or things online, for the most part, all we get is one camera. And there's a reason that we have a short attention span because we're like, we like to have things changed up in different vantage points. But in this case, I thought they did an amazing job. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but every single one of these wide angle shots into the draft room were all done with a wide angle camera and no sound. There was no sound from that component. Now, when they had the players in their house, they had a wide angle shot with sound. And then whenever they were going to interview somebody, they came in and did a close-up shot so that it could be more intimate. The emotion that you are trying to convey, the emotion you're trying to garner, is something that is extremely important when you're thinking about a virtual event and how you can use this. We don't want to just use different video shots for different reasons, for no reason at all. We want to have a strategy and a reason for everything we use. And so I thought the wide angle with no sound was very smart for like the war room. And I love they brought it in nice and tight for whenever they were doing interview shows. And then, of course, I don't know about you guys, but this was, he definitely stole the show when it came to the best war room of them all, which, hey, Cardinals GM, this is Arizona. I lived out in Arizona for 9 years. This was truly the best of the best, which is, definitely pretty cool to see what they did. I know my good friend Vincent Orlick, who's watching live, is out there in Arizona. Thanks, Vincent, for jumping in. I see Brian is saying what's up there on Facebook. Mitch Jackson asked, is this being shared on multiple platforms? Yes. We are on Twitch, LinkedIn Live, Facebook page, Facebook profile, as well as Periscope. So, thanks for tuning in wherever is best for you guys. Kingsbury, beautifully done. Such a beautiful done. And breaking that fourth wall, really what is important there is thinking outside the box. And while I said I'm going to try to implement a couple of things for you guys, well, this was something that was asked of me. I'm kind of known for my shoes, and someone the other day said, Brian, you should do a shoe cam. Well, here's your shoe cam for you, friends. We're going fourth wall. We have the bird's eye camera, we have the straight on camera, and a shoe cam. And really what this whole idea is, how do you change up that vantage point? How do you bring people in behind the scenes? And maybe how do you give them something you can't get anywhere else? And I don't know about you, but how many shoe cams have you guys seen on live video? Probably not very many, right? So, and for me, that's, it's all about, kind of changing up that vantage point, giving people a different view. Maybe you guys want to check in from the bird's eye camera up there so you can see this is my setup. I am a one-man team broadcasting all of this live to all these channels. I'm the one that created all the overlays and delays. This is kind of what I'm doing in my world. So yes, Deborah, the shoe cam is live, and I'm so glad you guys are enjoying a little change up there. But yeah, so there's a little shoe cam. It's all about, it comes down to making sure that you're providing a different vantage point, embracing technology when it makes sense, and hopefully having a little fun with it too. And to me, that's what it's all about. I think there's definitely some fun ways that you can do that. Shoe cam for the win. I'm glad you guys thought that was pretty fun. So we're going to jump into number 8. And I do have another camera fun thing for you guys before we get to number 15. And so number 8, if you guys are keeping track at home, which I don't know who would be keeping track at home, this is 8 of number 15. The 8 one is mixing up the content with live content, broadcasts, interviews, and entertainment. And I thought they did an amazing job of mixing in entertainment, mixing in different components within the broadcast. They had some great musicians. They had her. They had Jennifer Hudson. And not only were they very well produced, but they were very well integrated within the show. And it broke up some of that monotony of just being draft picks and Trey Wingo in the studio. And they also did a pretty good job of getting creative with their interview style, right? Some interviews were, two people side by side. Some of them were, the boxes of 4. Some of them were split screen. Sometimes they threw it out. And I think for everyone that's out there right now, when you're thinking about these different components, you have to get creative, right? Like right now here we can, I'll give you another creative one here. I'm getting creative on the fly. I have the 360 camera right here, recording a nice 360 time lapse. And if I had the extra device, my computer could handle it, I could give you a 360 view into what's going on, right? It's all about, how do we get creative to mix up the content, but it's also making sure that you're doing it in a way that makes a lot of sense. So kudos to them kind of integrating both, entertainment, different broadcast styles, some interviews, some, talking head, really, something that you can do in all kinds of different ways. I do see a bunch of people here jumping in live. Hold on, I'm writing all this down. I'm going to do a live stream right after, providing the top 20 lessons. There you go. I like it, Vincent. Go for it, my friend. I'm okay with that. Mitch Jackson said I should mount a GoPro on those laces. Yes, these are my Steelers slippers. I'm very proud of the fact that I have not worn shoes since March 11th, since I went into quarantine. I've been on flip-flops and no shoes. Funny enough, I don't like socks. I have a shoe thing, but I don't like socks. But we'll jump into number 9. So number 9, manage expectations and roll with the punches. Now, the only thing I always tell people is that the only guarantee that you have when you're virtual and live streaming is only guarantee you have is that something will go wrong, right? That's the only guarantee you have. And so then you have to be able to roll with that. You have to be able to embrace it, but you also have to be able to put things out on different channels and educate people the way you should do it. And so the NFL did a great job. They were up on TikTok and Twitch. They had different camera angles. And of course, I thought this was funny. The Texans, and I can't believe this was the only one. I don't know, those that are watching live, did anyone else see any major breakdowns by any of the coaches or general managers? But this was a funny one. The Texans coach, I think he was mad because his speakerphone or something wasn't working. But I was actually surprised there wasn't more of that. And I also, there are some people on Twitter, because, people on Twitter are always looking for something to complain about, even though I love Twitter. There are people on Twitter talking about like the delay and some of like the minor glitches with microphones and stuff. Let's face it, that stuff's gonna happen. Like if that's what you're complaining about, you need to probably get a life, because there's some things that are definitely gonna go wrong, some things that you have to roll with. And I do think the NFL did a great job of educating, but also kind of providing different views, different ways to kind of roll with the punches. Number 10, we got 5 left. Provide exclusive and real-time access when it makes sense. So if you guys were following the different channels on Facebook Live, on Twitter, on all of the different social channels, on YouTube, on Instagram, they had all of these different opportunities to ask questions to your favorite players, or to, if you donated, you got to come on camera during the Zoom call with Roger Goodell, and I think they raised over $7 million during that piece. And so when I think about live video, right? Yes, we can broadcast live video to the masses. They could broadcast the draft. That's a no-brainer. But the real power in live video is the participatory element, right? Like everyone here that's watching live, I can throw in your comments. This is participatory content. Scott Ayers says, I didn't watch any of it. Ever since the draft went to a weekend, I stopped watching it. Well, I wish that's fair. I was counting down for the draft for like 3 weeks because going a little bit stir crazy inside. So, it's not for everyone, but it's definitely, different ways and different things that you can jump in and do it. And, and I think, one of the things you also have to think about in live content is adding the elements that are exclusive when they make sense, but also, hey, like bringing people behind the scenes. Like I thought the draft did a really great job. Like, you got to see some of the coaches on their patio. You got to see, one of the players, his mom was excited to walk him down the red carpet. So he did a video of him walking his mom down the red carpet, and they posted that out there on the different channels. I thought they did a great job of providing exclusive real-time access across the different channels. All right, this one I didn't expect the NFL to do, because I might be on record to be calling it the No Fun League. And the No Fun League is usually connected to the fact that most of the time they're throwing flags for no reason. They don't want celebrations. They don't like social media, blah, 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 blah. But I have to say, the NFL gave the players, the coaches, some swim lanes, and even Roger Goodell. And here's the thing. It's one thing for people to be funny and for people to test the limits. It's another thing for them to test the limits and for the team behind the brand to just say, cool, we're gonna lean into what works. And so I don't know if you guys were watching a majority of the draft, but Roger Goodell spilled his M&Ms and made this joke about M&Ms. And then every time they threw the broadcast to him on the last day, they would ask him how many M&Ms are left in his container, and he'd hold up his container, right? And then of course you have Mike Vrabel up here, which I don't even know I still don't really even get what Mike Vrabel was doing with his bodyguards for his draft. But I tell you what, if you looked at the social media, not only did they own it, but they were making memes themselves of Roger Goodell, like what is he going to look like by the end of the draft? And Roger Goodell, he was giving a virtual hug to people on the camera, right? And so I think when we think about these things and we give people space to be creative, it's great that we give them space to be creative. It's another thing if we can celebrate it and lean into it if people are talking about it and people are having fun with it. Because to me, that's where that virality comes into. That's where a virtual event can really take on a world of its own. And that's something that a virtual environment can really do better than anywhere else. The ability to cut up content, the ability to kind of roll with the punches and things that you're doing. My good friend Roger Wakefield, a master of the live streaming and video over there, said, "What is this Pittsburgh stuff?" Oh, I live and breathe Pittsburgh everything. Born and raised in Pittsburgh. Thanks for jumping in over there on LinkedIn. We're going through 15 virtual event lessons that I found during the actual virtual NFL drive. And hopefully you guys are enjoying this. I'm going to share all the tips in a blog post up there on my website for those that aren't sticking around the whole time, or maybe you want to share that out to your community. I know not everybody's into video or into live video especially. So we're going to jump into number 12. And number 12 is upcycling your content in real time to create social conversations. When we're thinking about things that are online and you're creating an event, most of the time, let's face it, if you have an offline event and you're selling tickets to your event and it's a 3-day event, promoting the event during day one is all about just telling people that you should be here, and you're hopefully bringing them, educating them to come to next year's event. In a virtual event, by creating collateral on day one, you actually can have people tune in and buy tickets for day 2, day 3, go watch the recordings. Maybe they watched a little bit of the draft, but they had no idea that there was all these different war rooms, right? Like, how cool is that? And so I thought it was really interesting. If you look at the social channels, you look at the blog posts, the NFL, the ESPN, what they did was they were taking different components of the broadcast and they were sharing them out on all the channels, right? So if you guys saw, like back here when Roger Goodell was doing the announcement of the pick, it had the fans cheering, right? It had all the fans of the teams. Well, they actually sent that video clip to all of the teams and let the teams share it out. Like, think about this for your virtual event. Imagine if you had your host or speakers and 30 minutes after they finished presenting, you had different GIFs and different clips of their video for them to share on social media on the day of the event, right? Like, content, repurposing content for a virtual event is nothing new, but in the virtual space, the more you can do it in real time and the more you can focus on driving social conversations, the more it can drive attention back. Like on Instagram, the NFL, they put out a poll, what was your favorite war room? Or if you could go sit in one war room for next year's draft, whose room would you want to sit in? And funny enough, I thought this was creative. A lot of people said they wanted to hang out with Roger Goodell for the NFL draft. And so they actually they're going to give away for someone for next year to be able to watch NFL in Roger Goodell's man cave. And so these are those ways that we can be creative. We can leverage virtual experiences to really take it to the next level. Also getting creative with the material for fans. So I thought this was really neat. The day before the draft, and then of course throughout the draft, they made custom virtual backgrounds for every single team, and they allowed you to download it for free. And what else would that do? It allows you to promote the event, it allows you to put it behind you in your Zoom calls. We all know that everyone loves playing around with virtual backgrounds. For me, I move too much for green screens and virtual backgrounds, so not really not really as much for me. Brian Kramer says, this is a masterclass. Thank you. Oh, my pleasure. I tell you what, I worked, this is probably the longest I've worked on production element of a live stream in a long while, but it's what I'm selling in my speaking package, and I thought it was a great way to kind of connect the dots, practice what I preach. Hopefully you guys, you guys get there and, you get a little taste of the possibilities. And remember, I did this all myself. I did all the screenshots on my iPad or on the computer. I loaded the graphics up here in Ecamm Live, and then I programmed it out. I wrote myself up a script. I have all of the different things here, and then I just loaded it into different overlays. And I'm using my cool little keypad here to toggle between the different scenes and hopefully keep this thing moving along. So we're on to number 13. And this is a big one. I'm getting this question a lot from a lot of people out there. Is like, how do we incorporate sponsors into a virtual event. And here's the thing. If it's just a logo on a landing page, that does not count as incorporating a sponsor. It should be thought of a collaboration of content and the ability to co-create content. So I thought this was really well done. The NFL on their NFL Facebook page, they had different players, different celebrities going live with a sponsored post talking about the sponsor and then asking for donations. Pizza Hut also had a Pittsburgh Steeler, Juju Smith-Schuster. He posted on Twitter. He did an Instagram story of getting his Pizza Hut delivery. And then he also, his piece is also a commercial during the broadcast. And I think if we're looking at a lot of this, that is out there for everyone that's doing what's going on, the ability to integrate sponsors in different types of content should actually be more valuable for a sponsor than having a booth that people walk by, scan their badge, and then when you email them, we all hit unsubscribe, right? So if we can get creative with sponsor co-creation of content, I actually think we're going to be able to provide more value for sponsors. Therefore, we can pay more money for speakers and hosts and also up the quality of different broadcasts. We just have to, this is the thing, we cannot allow offline limitations to be included in a virtual arena, because we need to throw away the limitations that exist offline and we need to embrace what's possible here online. And so I thought they did a great job of that kind of co-creation and collaborating with sponsors. They even did some cool things here, which is number 14. We only have one left after this. Thanks guys so much for watching live, and those who are watching the replay or this after the fact. Thanks for jumping in and watching this. Number 14 is be social and do it multi-channel. Now, this is something, we should never blast the same message on every channel because every channel is a little bit different. But I loved how they did it with these two things right here. They incorporated like a video with a tweet from one of the players, or a photo that's kind of cropped with a tweet from one of the, so it's the first round pick, Joe Burrows, who went to the Bungles, and a tweet from Adam Schefter. If you're in the NFL, he's the number one analyst when it comes to breaking news around the NFL. And I think we sometimes in the virtual space, we think, okay, well, we're going to share this picture on Instagram, we're going to share this video on Facebook, we're going to share this tweet on Twitter. But the idea of kind of crossing over and kind of allowing the content to build on each other gives you endless possibilities, right? So I don't care if you're a small business, you're whatever it is. Try to think about ways that you can multi-use content. And here's a great example. Maybe you take a picture of your new quarantine setup for your restaurant, and you on the picture take one of your customer testimonials that maybe either makes sense or doesn't make sense and add it to the photo, right? So you're adding kind of two layers of conversation and context to the different content. I think when we're in this virtual space, we aren't limited by, hey, this can only be there or this can only be that way. And I also thought it was interesting, they did a good job of, using live video in between, but then cutting out the live video, taking out some of the fluff, and then reposting it as a production video or maybe a two-minute clip. Like what I'm going to do with this video tomorrow is I'm going to cut it up into different segments. I'm going to share it out across social media in different formats, right? Different elements. And so there's definitely something to kind of embrace that when it comes to what's going on their side. So let's see. Brian said, "Oh, the Bungles. Yeah, that's a jab." Hey. My daughters don't wear purple on Sunday because there's no team I hate more than the Ravens. But the Bungles, the Browns, and the Patriots are up there as well. So that's what it's about. Yes, get creative with your sponsored content. Definitely can have some fun with that and do some things in some different ways. All right, we're on number 15, and then I have something fun. Hopefully you guys will like at the end. And number 15, be open-minded and open to new possibilities. Now, I was making fun a little bit of this ridiculous Zoom call gone wrong that the NFL did on their Facebook Live. But part of it was fun and part of it was different. And maybe it's something that they do a little bit better structure next time. But if you can own these things and you can just kind of, hey, this is what it is. Like I love this picture. This picture was actually posted by the NFL. And they said, I don't know if we could ever get Roger Goodell off the couch for another draft. He's used to being on his feet and giving hugs. This year, by the end of the draft, he's in his lazy boy with his Sunday best on, right? And I think when we look at change, we look at risk. It's very easy to be like, oh, thank God nothing went wrong. But I think it's more valuable if we can push the envelope and we can take this to the next, to the extreme and really push where we want this all to happen. And let's face it, numbers don't lie. The NFL posted this today, and they said that it shattered their all-time viewer record for one night. Now, there's a lot of factors, like we're living in times that we've never seen before. I mean, I've been watching replays of sports for hours upon hours. As soon as I'm done with this broadcast, I'm going to go watch episode 3 and episode 4 of the Michael Jordan documentary, because that's amazing content. But look at that. ABC, ESPN, NFL, and ESPN, all their different channels combined had a massive 37% increase, right? 11.4 million viewers in 2019, up to 15.6 million viewers this year. I mean, that is beyond impressive. And so I am going to include, for those that are still here, I'm going to include in the blog post 3 things that I think they should integrate for next year's virtual draft, the virtual component of virtual draft. But there was an interesting conversation, and I had the video queued up, but the audio wasn't working. But I'll put a link in the comments on all the different social channels. But there was a really interesting video of Roger Goodell after the fact. And what he said was the general managers and the coaches were giving him feedback and letting him know that they love the format because they got to spend more time with their kids. They got to include their family in the actual draft process. The players said they felt like it was more intimate and more fun and more engaging. And one of the things that Roger Goodell said at the end, which I think is really valuable, is he said, you know what we're going to do? Next year, we're going to have the draft offline. They're going to have the Las Vegas one in 2022. But one of the things he said was, we're going to re-examine everything we do offline and ask ourselves, what did we learn in the virtual event? And what components of that can we integrate to amplify next year's offline event? And this is where I'm going to leave you guys with this. I truly do believe virtual content will never replace offline. But it's going to amplify, it's going to connect 365 days a year. It's also going to open our minds to new ideas, new possibilities, new elements that we can integrate. I mean, I know for a fact next year they're going to have a family war room, because for all the previous years, it's a bunch of old white guys in suits, for the most part, in these giant rooms and running around like crazy rich people and then like making their picks. This year it was family people in their family setting and a little bit distraught, picking up their phone. I mean, some of them had cardboard tables and some of them had couches. But I think we are all craving access. We are all craving connection. And let's face it, we're also craving a little bit of fun and a little different vantage point. So I challenge everyone to look at examples like the NFL draft and the different things that are out there and find ways to think differently, to remove the limitations that we have from offline. Because here's the thing, limitations inspire creativity. But if we want virtual events to be valuable for our audience, if we want virtual events to be able to connect like never before, we can't be stuck in our offline ways. I can guarantee you, if you just take an offline experience and throw it online, it's going to be a waste. If the draft would have just had a bunch of fans in one room, or just Trey Wingo with nobody in the audience and no in-home access, it would have failed miserably. We have to throw out the limitations from offline. We have to embrace the limitations that exist online, and we got to get creative with how we make all of that happen. And that includes having like a shoe cam, right? And having some fun with the things that go on out there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully this was a little fun, different way of doing a broadcast. Like I said, I'm doing virtual events now, not only hosting, but I'm consulting. I'm also coaching different executives and speakers on how they can set up their different, different technology, different equipment they have going on. As you guys can see, and here's the interesting thing. You guys want to see some? This is the little bit of the after show, and I'll shut this thing down. So you guys got enough of the shoe cam. Here's what I'm going to show you. All right. So this is the truth, right? So this is my setup. But this is what you need to see. Do you guys want to know what the bird's eye angle is setting up over there? All right, here you go. You ready? It's actually on my door. Can you guys see that? I have the bird's eye view on the door frame of my door with a USB cable all the way back down to here for me to do that, right? I mean, like, you got to get creative. You can't allow the limitations. I was like, how am I going to get a bird's eye camera on that side? And I was going to put it behind me, and I couldn't make that happen. And you know what I thought? I was like, I wonder if the cable's long enough for me to put it up there on that door. And, well, that's what you got to do. To me, it's not about trying to be perfect. It's not about doing things and having the most expensive gear. It's about getting creative and hopefully giving you guys a little bit different ways of doing things and, you know, having some fun along the way. Cheers, my friends. Make it a great evening. If you have someone that wants help with their virtual event, or maybe you want to get better at virtual presentations, make sure to hit me up. I will make sure Michelle, who is head of my event team, gets back to you, and we set you guys up with whatever makes the most sense. I love working with brands, leaders. I love working with different companies. I'm working with some media companies right now, and you know, ultimately, we all have to press the damn button. So till next time, my friends, make it a great day. Remember, go above and beyond to let people know that you care. You let them know what's going on, and we're going to get through this, because remember, we each got to make sure we're doing our best, but we got this. We're going to make this all happen. Till next time, my friends, cheers.